John Carter had always believed that life had quietly slipped past him. At 68, he lived alone on his ranch at the edge of the human colony on Vernalis 9, a planet of red plains, jagged mountains, and endless skies. Once he had dreamed of adventures, of raising a family with a woman who would share his life. But those dreams had faded decades ago, leaving only memories of laughter that no longer echoed in his empty house. The ranch was his sanctuary, but also his prison. Each day followed the same rhythm: check the fences, feed the livestock, repair what had broken, and sit by the fire at night, listening to the wind howl across the plains. The evening sky had a peculiar hue that day, a deep orange fading into a violet streak. John was tightening a bolt on the water pump when a glimmer of light flickered across the horizon. At first he thought it was a reflection from the sun sinking behind the mountains. Then he noticed the lights moving in a pattern that no human aircraft could manage. His heart quickened. He squinted, shielding his eyes from the last rays of sun, and saw small silver ships descending slowly toward his ranch. He dropped his wrench. His mind raced. Visitors on Vernalis 9 were rare, especially unannounced ones. Most humans avoided this far corner of the colony, leaving it to him and the occasional trader passing through. He had seen ships in the distance before, but they always stayed in orbit. These were different. They were landing. As the ships touched the ground with a soft hum, doors slid open with a hiss. 11 figures emerged, walking with a grace that made John's breath catch. They were tall, taller than any human, their bodies slender but strong, with skin that shimmered faintly under the fading sunlight. Their eyes were large, expressive, and tinged with a sadness that tugged at his heart. Each carried herself with quiet dignity, yet their movements hinted at exhaustion and grief. John rubbed his eyes. "What in the world?" he muttered, his voice cracking. One of the women stepped forward. Her presence alone made the others pause respectfully. A device on her wrist emitted a soft blue light, and suddenly John could understand her words. "Greetings, human. We are travelers seeking refuge. Our ships have failed us, and we are widows of war." He froze. "Widows?" he repeated. The word felt heavy. She nodded solemnly. "We are from 11 different star systems. Each of us has lost our spouse in the intergalactic war that has scarred our people. We seek a protector, someone honorable, strong, and compassionate to help us survive." John swallowed hard. He had spent most of his life isolated from such affairs. Intergalactic war was something he had only read about in colony reports, stories of violence and bravery that seemed distant and unreal. And yet here they were, 11 alien women standing before him asking for his protection. "Come in," he said slowly, stepping aside, unsure of what else to do. They moved gracefully past him, their gaze lingering on the ranch, the livestock, and the small, weather-worn house he had called home for decades. The eldest among them, with hair like spun silver, inspected the fences while another examined the livestock. They were careful, respectful, and competent, clearly capable of handling themselves despite their recent losses. Over the next few days, the alien widows began helping on the ranch. They learned quickly, their hands delicate but efficient as they repaired fences, fed the animals, and even managed the water pumps with ease. John watched, amazed by their skill and their eagerness to contribute. He offered what little guidance he could, showing them how to handle human tools, how to tend the animals, and how to manage the small crops that dotted the ranch. Despite their grace, the widows did not speak much of themselves at first, but in quiet moments around the fire or while tending the animals, they shared fragments of their past. Each had loved deeply and lost painfully. One had been a commander of her fleet. Another had been an engineer who had built entire cities in orbit. Their grief was profound, but so was their resilience. John listened, offering words of comfort when he could, but mostly just sitting and sharing the silence that had been his companion for so long. One evening, after a long day of repairs, the eldest widow approached him while the sun dipped behind the mountains. Her silver hair glowed in the twilight. "Human," she said softly, "our culture has a tradition. When widows find a protector who demonstrates courage and honor, they must choose a husband to bind themselves to. It is a sacred duty for survival and continuity." John blinked. "A husband, me?" "Yes," she said firmly. "All of us have agreed. You have shown kindness, patience, and strength. We trust you with our lives." John laughed, a sound of disbelief mixed with nervousness. "You're joking. I'm just an old rancher. I can fix fences and herd cows. That's it. The widows exchanged looks, their eyes serious. "In our eyes, that is enough," the silver-haired woman said. "We have lost leaders, warriors, and loved ones. You have given us hope. That is a gift greater than any battle skill or rank." John's laughter faded, replaced by a mixture of awe and fear. 11 women, all of different origins, all calling him husband? It was too much to grasp. Yet he saw the truth in their eyes. They were serious. Over the next few days, the widows prepared a ceremony, a simple but sacred rite. They arranged the livestock into neat patterns, lit small fires, and decorated the ranch with plants that shimmered under Vernalis 9's twin moons. John watched, uncertain, as they moved with quiet precision. When the ceremony began, the widows spoke words of allegiance, trust, and commitment. John stood in the center of the circle, overwhelmed. He wanted to protest, to tell them that he could not be responsible for 11 lives, but something in their gaze rooted him to the spot. There was hope in their eyes, hope he had not felt in decades. The ritual ended with the widows bowing their heads to him. "From this day forward, you are our husband, our protector, our guide," they said in unison. John felt the weight of their words settle on his shoulders. The first night after the ceremony, John sat on his porch staring at the stars. The widows were inside, quietly preparing meals, cleaning, and settling in. He realized something profound. He was no longer alone. His life, which he had assumed was over, was beginning anew. The days that followed were filled with adjustments. John taught the widows more about the ranch while they taught him about their cultures, their technologies, and their ways of thinking. Together they created a small but thriving community. They learned to combine human and alien techniques, making the ranch more productive than it had ever been. John found himself laughing again, joking with the widows, and even feeling a sense of pride in their accomplishments. Each woman had a distinct personality. Some were bold and commanding, others gentle and nurturing, some quiet but fiercely intelligent. Together they challenged him, supported him, and slowly they became a family. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, John looked at the widows working together in the fields. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, a feeling he had not experienced in years. Life had surprised him. He had expected loneliness, silence, and the slow fading of his days. Instead, he found himself at the center of something extraordinary. 11 lives intertwined with his own, trusting him, looking to him, and in their own ways, loving him. John knew challenges lay ahead. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, and the widow's enemies might one day find them. But for now, he embraced the quiet joy of his new life. He had thought his days of purpose were over, but he was wrong. Life was not ending. It was beginning again in ways he could never have imagined. As he stood there, watching the widows move with grace and strength, John smiled. The ranch was no longer just a place of solitude. It had become a home, a sanctuary, a place where hope, courage, and love could thrive even in the harshest corners of the galaxy, and for the first time in decades, John felt truly alive. The dawn on Vernalis 9 was pale and quiet, a thin mist rising over the red plains. John Carter stood at the edge of his ranch, looking over the fields where the 11 alien widows had already begun their morning chores. Each woman moved with purpose and precision, tending to animals, repairing fences, and checking the water systems. What had once been his solitary world was now a hive of activity, alive with energy, laughter, and even a sense of warmth he had not felt in decades. John felt a deep sense of pride watching them. Despite their losses and the grief they carried, the widows were strong, capable, and resilient, and somehow they had trusted him, placing their lives in his hands. That trust was a responsibility he had never imagined, but he embraced it fully. He adjusted his hat, grabbed his tool belt, and joined them in the fields, ready to face whatever the day would bring. The routine continued smoothly for several weeks. John taught them about human farming methods, blending them with their alien techniques to improve efficiency. He showed them how to rotate pastures to prevent overgrazing, how to repair machinery, and even how to anticipate weather patterns using old Earth methods adapted to Vernalis 9's climate. In return, they taught him things he had never thought possible: how to use alien energy fields to protect livestock, how to synthesize nutrient-rich fodder from local plants, and even how to sense danger in subtle ways, a skill the widows had honed in their war-torn worlds. It was during one of these lessons that the first real test of John's courage arrived. As he was inspecting a perimeter fence with Lyra, the widow who had been a fleet commander in her home system, a low rumble shook the ground. Lyra's eyes widened. "They have found us," she said quietly. John turned to see a group of space raiders approaching from the plains. They were heavily armed, their ships hovering low above the ground, engines humming menacingly. John's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. The widows had faced worse, but he knew it was his duty to protect them now. "Get the women inside," he ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his chest. Lyra nodded, signaling the others. They moved quickly, herding the livestock toward the barns while John began to prepare the defenses. He checked the fences for weak points, armed himself with rifles he had maintained for decades, and rigged a few of the alien devices the widows had brought with them to create energy barriers. The raiders landed with a thunderous crash, their boots kicking up red dust as they approached. They shouted commands in a language John did not understand, but their intent was clear. Capture the widows, take the ranch, and leave nothing behind. John raised his rifle, aiming carefully. He had hunted animals all his life, but this was different. These were intelligent, dangerous enemies, and they underestimated him because he was human. The first wave of raiders charged, and John fired with precision. Each shot found its mark, taking down the attackers before they could reach the main compound. Lyra and the other widows joined him, their alien weapons slicing through the raiders with efficiency and speed. The combination of John's human tactics and their advanced technology created a formidable defense. One of the raiders tried to flank them, but John had anticipated it. Using the terrain to his advantage, he led the attacker into a trap he had set earlier, a pit concealed by energy fields and debris. The raider fell with a shout, and the rest hesitated, realizing they were not dealing with easy prey. Hours passed in a blur of action. The raiders regrouped and launched several more attacks, but John and the widows stood firm. Together they created barriers, set traps, and used guerrilla tactics to drive the invaders back. John marveled at the widows' skill and courage. Despite their past losses, they fought with unwavering determination, their loyalty to him evident in every movement. Finally, as the twin moons began to rise over the horizon, the raiders retreated defeated and humiliated. John lowered his rifle, his arms trembling from exhaustion. The widows gathered around him, their eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper: respect, trust, and perhaps even affection. "You were incredible," Lyra said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We all believed in you, but today, you proved that humans are more than capable of facing anything." John shook his head, smiling wearily. "I just did what I had to do," he replied. "You all fought just as bravely. I couldn't have done it alone." The nights that followed were quiet but filled with reflection. John realized that the raider attack had changed everything. He was no longer just a rancher. He was a protector, a leader, and someone who could make a difference in the galaxy. The widows trusted him with their lives, and he intended to honor that trust in every way possible. Life slowly returned to a new normal. The widows and John worked together to repair the damage from the attack, strengthening the ranch's defenses and improving their farming systems. They built new structures using alien materials, blending human and alien architecture to create a compound that was both functional and beautiful. As the weeks turned into months, John began to understand the personalities of each widow. Lyra was bold and strategic, often taking the lead in planning defenses. Mara, a quiet and gentle widow, cared for the livestock with tender attention. Sela, the youngest, was curious and inventive, constantly experimenting with new technologies to improve life on the ranch. Each woman had her strengths, and together they formed a cohesive and efficient unit. John, in turn, shared stories of Earth, of his youth, of his family, and the ranching life he had known. The widows listened with fascination, asking questions about human traditions, foods, and customs. In these moments, John felt a deep connection to them, a bond that transcended species, culture, and experience. One evening, as they sat around a fire, Sela asked, "Human, why did you not leave us when you had the chance? You could have stayed safe in your house." John looked at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "I realized something important," he said. "Life is not meant to be spent in fear. You all trusted me, and I could not turn away. Besides, I was tired of being alone. I wanted purpose again, even if it meant danger." The widows were silent, contemplating his words. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. Their trust had turned into admiration, and admiration into something deeper. John felt a warmth in his chest that he had not known in decades. For the first time, he realized that love and family were not limited by species or distance. They were defined by courage, loyalty, and the willingness to stand by each other no matter the cost. Life on the ranch continued to flourish. The widows and John developed new routines, balancing work with learning and leisure. They celebrated small victories, shared stories under the twin moons, and trained together to ensure that they could face any future threats. John became more than a rancher. He became a symbol of human resilience and ingenuity, proving that even an old man could make a profound difference in the lives of those around him. Months later, word reached them that the raiders had been defeated in their sector, unable to recover from the humiliation of their failed attack. The widows celebrated, but John knew that vigilance was always necessary. He trained regularly, sharing human survival tactics with the widows while learning from their combat experience. Together, they became a formidable team, respected by neighboring colonies and feared by any who dared threaten them. One quiet evening, John stood on the porch, watching the widows tend to the livestock under the soft light of the moons. The ranch had transformed into a thriving sanctuary, a testament to human ingenuity and the strength of unity. He felt a sense of fulfillment that he had never known. Life had not ended for him. It had begun anew, richer and more meaningful than he could have imagined. As he reflected on the months that had passed, he realized something profound. The widows had come seeking protection, but in truth they had given him something even greater: a reason to live, a family to care for, and a future filled with hope and purpose. He smiled, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by trust, courage, and the unbreakable bonds they had forged on the red plains of Vernalis 9. For John Carter, the old rancher who had once believed life was over, every sunrise now held promise. Every challenge was an opportunity, and every moment was a reminder that humans, even alone in the vast galaxy, could inspire hope, courage, and love in ways that no one, not even the stars themselves, could deny.